topic of this video is order of operations. Here's the breakdown of how the order of operations work. First, we're going to calculate within the innermost parentheses or other grouping symbols. So besides parentheses, we'll have the squared brackets, set brackets, absolute value bars, and also thinking about above or below the main fraction bar. We're going to simplify all expressions with exponents next. After that, we will multiply and divide as those operations appear in the problem from left to right. And the last step is to add and subtract as those operations appear from left to right. So you've probably heard about that anagram PEMDAS. So we have P for the parentheses and other grouping symbols, E for exponents, M and D for multiply and divide, and finally A and S for add and subtract. So now you know where PEMDAS comes from. Let's take a look at our first example and we'll apply the order of operations. Example 1, 6 minus the quantity of 12 minus 10 squared. We can notice we do have parentheses, so we should take care of anything inside the parentheses first. So we still have 6 minus the amount in the parenthesis, 12 minus 10 would leave us 2, and we have an exponent of 2. Now, although we still have parentheses, those are needed to know which term is raised to the power. So we have the quantity of 2 with an exponent of 2. So we actually have 6 minus 2 squared. 2 squared would be 4. Our last step now, notice we don't have any multiplication or division symbols, but we do have subtraction. So 6 minus 4 will leave us 2 for the final answer. In example 2, again, we do have parentheses. We have a subtraction sign. And when a number or a variable is written right next to a set of parentheses, it is implied that we will multiply, even though there's not any dot or multiplication sign. So according to our order of operations here to the left, the grouping symbols need to be done first. So I have 8 minus 5, nothing changes. Do not take 8 and subtract 5. Subtraction is way down at the bottom of the list. We're not ready for that yet. So grouping symbols are first. So keep 8, keep minus, keep 5. Now the amount in the quantity, 4 plus 2 is 6. So we did simplify what was inside of the parenthesis first. We do not have any exponents, so we don't need to worry about exponents. Multiplication and division are going to occur before adding and subtracting. So I can see that I have a subtraction, and these parentheses mean that 5 is multiplied by 6. So I need to do this multiplication before I do any subtracting. So I still have 8 minus 5 times 6 would be 30. So finally, 8 minus 30 will leave us negative 22. So don't forget the negative on that. All right, let's try the next example. In example 3, again, we have the order of operations here just to remind us of what order to go in. Parentheses and other grouping symbols, so we do have several parentheses here. But notice inside each of these parentheses, there's only a single numerical value, so they already are simplified. So what the parentheses indicate here is multiplication. Our other grouping symbol, which is harder to identify maybe, is that we do have a fraction bar. So right here is the fraction bar breaking the problem into a numerator and a denominator. So that allows us to simplify each of those locations separately. All right, we'll start in the numerator. We have an exponent here, so 3 squared could simplify as 9. Then what we actually have is negative 4 multiplied by 2 multiplied by negative 5. So I have 2 numbers that are negative and 1 that is positive. Any even number of negative numbers multiplied will make a positive product. Or you can just take them 2 at a time. So negative 4 times 2, that's going to give me negative 8, and that is what I will multiply by negative 5. So a negative times a negative will make a positive 40. So I really have 9 added to 40 for our numerator. In the denominator, this is much simpler. 2 times 2, that makes 4. Notice the only operation remaining in the numerator here is addition. 9 plus 40 would make 49 divided by 4. Now, since there are not specific directions about which form to leave an answer in, you could leave the answer as 49/4, or you could take 49 and divide it by 4 to get a decimal equivalent, or write the answer as a mixed number. So since the original problem was in fraction form, I'm going to leave the answer as a fraction. Example 4 is very similar to example 3. You can see we have the division bar as our grouping symbol, and the parentheses given here are just to imply multiplication. Everything inside has been simplified. So moving along with PEMDAS, we have an exponent here. 4 squared would make 16. And then we have negative 4 times 1 times 5. So we actually have negative 4 multiplied by 5. So negative times positive would give us negative 20. So I know I'll be subtracting 20 from 16. In the denominator, we have 2 times 1, which is 2. With 16 minus 20, so I'm starting with a small number, subtracting something larger, I'm going to have negative 4 divided by 2. And anytime you can simplify a fraction, you need to. So a negative divided by a positive will be a negative answer, and 4 divides by 2 evenly as 2. So our final answer is negative 2. Our last example, number 5 here, we've got negative 14 multiplied by a fraction that is also negative, and then subtraction of 8. So we do not have any exponents. We do have parentheses for a grouping symbol. Everything inside of the parenthesis has already been simplified. So these parentheses are indicating multiplication. So we have some numbers being multiplied, and we have subtraction. So looking over at the list, here's multiplication, here's subtraction. So it looks like we are supposed to be multiplying first. If you have an integer multiplied by a fraction, you might find it helpful to rewrite negative 14 as negative 14 over 1. So now when you're multiplying these fractions together, it might be a little easier to track which numbers are actually in the numerator and which are in the denominator. So in the numerator, we have negative 14 multiplied by negative 3. So that's going to make a positive 42 over 7, because 1 times 7 is 7. Subtract 8. Now, if there's any way that we could reduce the fraction, that might be helpful. 42 divided by 7 is exactly 6. Subtract 8, so we get an answer of -2. Do make sure that you're looking over the order of operations and always following these in order from top to bottom in the list. That's how we have a uniform set of answers. If everybody works the problems out according to the order of operations, we know that everybody working the problems will get the same solution in the end. So I hope you found this helpful with the order of operations today.